Assalamu alaikum. Hi, Oracle Reiki Spiritual Healer. And as we continue to talk about these types of cleansings, the necessary cleansings that the truth will cleanse, that, certain spiritual cleanses with herbs, certain spiritual cleansings by praying over the situation will continue, to cleanse this type of negative energy, this devourer energy, this deception energy, the liar and the deceiving energy that is within the home and the community, especially among a lot of, the black and brown people. So, I have a tendency to tell you these stories because, this is what I have an understanding of when we're coming into leadership. And you must remember that, I have been a leader in my profession most of my life, in hotels, in restaurants, as a manager. So, we always want to deal fairly with the people that we're leading. We also want to help the people that we're leading. And it's not just, on the job. It's not just in business. It's in the household. That is the first thing that you will understand when you become a leader, that the home, you have to be the best person in your home. And so I'm giving you these understandings and, these stories that I'm going to tell you, from my own life, so that you get an understanding. And we got, a sunburst coming through my window in the back, but we're going to ignore that. So, we thank God under all conditions. So, I remember, my mother letting me know that my father, he could do certain jobs. He could do certain jobs. Although my father had been most of his life schizophrenic and had never been diagnosed, so he was able to control it to a certain degree. So, I was always taken, by my father because he was always mechanically inclined. And, I would be, right by his side when I was little, helping him with certain things. He, would do, build engines for lawnmowers. He would build, he would build TVs back, the big bubble TVs or anything like that, for people in our community. He would fix things that other people could not fix. Chainsaws, anything with a small engine, he was able to fix it. Generators, anything of that nature. So I was his helper for a long time. Electricity, he could run electrical wires. He could do plumbing. Again, my grandfather was a master plumber. And they would build houses from the ground up. So they were, carpenters. And, I learned a lot from my father, especially when I bought the trailer that he gave me when he got too old to take care of himself. So my mother would tell me, when my father was getting off work, because my father worked at a chicken plant when I was very young. And he would, fix the conveyor belt. He would fix the machinery in this chicken plant. So my father was always good with his hands. So, when my father was getting off work, my mother would tell me, go in there and run him some water. So this is what women had to do at that time, and I would go in there and run my father some water. And so when he came in the house, she was extra nice to him. So he would go get in the bathtub because he was covered in chicken guts from fixing this conveyor belt and this machinery in this factory. So, and at this time, this is what I understood, from my mother, that this is the only job that he could get. And you respect the man for doing a day's work. And you make sure that he has something to eat, and you treat him kindly, with what we have to offer, hospitality, a nice bath and some food. Okay. So this is what, we were taught, growing up. And so as I got older, I started to see certain things. My aunt would, say, there's something wrong with your father. He could do better than what he's doing. He doesn't want to do better because, he's still trying, to acclimate to what his father wanted him to be and to be a part of his family instead of, standing up for his family. And so, what I learned from these types of situations is, you have a lot of people who will talk different kinds of things. You will hear different kinds of talk, but we have to go with the most reasonable at the time. The most reasonable understanding is that, even though the times were against men, women could have a job working with, the Marriott Marquis hotels and things of that nature, and get paid almost as much as the black males could at that time. And black males did not like that. My father did not like the fact that my mother could compete with him. He did not want my mother to compete with him. But, in that time, he could not compete in society either. And, his family, my grandfather would not help him because at that time, the families looked down on people who were mentally challenged, and they poured into the children in the family who were not, mentally challenged. So therefore, my father was ousted as the black sheep. And this is what I understood, growing up as a child, that the reason that a lot of the black men who were like my father were upset with women because, they did not embody the means in order to support their families, to do for their wives, or live the life that they wanted to live without the female, without their wives. So many times you would have these males who did not have any skills or mentally challenged, who have not taken accountability or healed. You would have them jumping on their wives because they did not, want their wives to leave them. They wanted to subdue any kind of threat of their wives leaving. And they wanted to, also compete in society with other men. And this is the way that they did it against women. And this is the way that they are still trying to do that now. So, what we have is an understanding that, my father came to a conclusion that, my mother decided that she was not going to help him because once this factory or this meat processing plant went out of business, and my mother decided that she wasn't going to help him because of his behavior. And he ended up, having to go back to, his family and, ask them for work and pay them. And then he started to see that they wasn't going to pay him the right amount, like he was inferior because he had a disability, or he was, stupid to them because he had a disability. So when my mother and him, they got back together and they finally decided, that a lot of that foolishness was going to stop because, my mother would, shoot at my father. So we wasn't playing any games back then. So, and my mother finally decided to help my father and with a job, and she got him a security job. And every week, like clockwork, like before, they called my mother Friday because he would come home and give my mother the money, on Friday so that she would not leave and so that she would not look outside of the home, and so that she would, that was a sign that they were going to pull together. So, he called her Friday. That was her nickname. And, and that was also, a warning and a covenant, with my father, that it doesn't matter, you're not with your family anymore. This is your family, and if you can either make it or break it. So this is what stopped my father from competing with my mother in the relationship, when he finally understood that his family wasn't going to help him. And no matter how much he put his wife down in front of them, or what he went and said to them, behind her back, ultimately they would take advantage of him, and he would end up coming back to my mother, and they would end up making up in this way. So, these are the types of stories that I'm telling you, because this is a lot of what's going on in society. A lot of these men who do not have the skills, who have not healed, they want to be in, the high priority, calling the shots. They want to look good, to the women in their family, to the women in their lives, but they haven't done the work. And this is what I say all the time. Until you start taking a look at yourself and stop competing with someone that God didn't put you in competition with. Nobody, if you have chosen a woman that's out of your league, then you should decide and say, I want the best for you, but I have to go. And many men cannot do that. There are some women who cannot do that. But the difference with women is that, once they see that you're happier, or, you have, advanced, you started building with this other female that they could not build with you, then they are happily to, step back and say that, you were right, and she is the winner. Okay, so this is where we have to get to in society, with our men, because they're competing with women, something that women have not taken from them. It was given by the same entity who does not want them to compete in society. And they're trying to, abuse the women because they don't want to go and fight the entity, the colonizer or the enslavers. They would rather join the enslavers and the colonizer than, to call a spade and say that, you are the problem. You have taken the land. You have taken the resources, instead of, calling the spade a spade, that, your fathers would rather let you go into purgatory of being pimps and hustlers, than to, set you aright and tell you the truth. That you cannot be in competition with someone that's not in competition with you. You need to go and be in competition with somebody either better. You need to go and ask questions. You need to go and heal. And you need to go and do the things that our fathers were doing. You need to look back in the past and get those skills if there's no one to train you, because, that kind of level of chosen one are in men and women, to look back at the past and learn from those mistakes. So this is how we are healing from that. This is how my father had to heal from that. This is how my mother, had to send him back to the past in order for him to learn and for him to stop being in competition and to break that entity with the truth. So, I hope that you have enjoyed this story. I hope that you have enjoyed this message. Please like, share, and subscribe to me over all of my platforms. You can book your one-on-one sessions with me. You can book your life coaching sessions with me. And you can also donate to my channel so that, we can hook up together and I can acclimate a gift to your situation as well. So please make sure you leave a comment for me. I'm High Oracle, Reiki Spiritual Healer. Assalamu alaikum.